Good evening, everyone, and a very, very special welcome from beautiful Baxter. I think all of you know the magic of this place. I think, as you know, I'm from Melbourne, but I live in Sydney, and I just came down 4 or 5 days ago. The borders are opening. So I crept over, and it's so lovely to be here. Jackie actually said I was trapped here. I'm not sure I really feel trapped. It's just such a wonderful environment to be in. And I would just like to share a few of my thoughts, and then we're friends. I think most of us know each other. If you would like to ask something, you'll be most welcome. I think if you go any part of this planet, any part of this world, and ask any type of human being what is most important in life, you'll get the same answer everywhere: my family, my relationships. And I often feel that no matter how challenging life is, even this period of COVID that all of us have been through, if my families are rich and meaningful, my relationships, then I can manage. I have like a support system, and I can manage. And many times I think that if we have these quality, healthy relationships, life is good. And I many times remember a scene for me when I was just 20 years old. I was in Calcutta. I don't know whether many of you have been there. Amazing city. The population of Australia in one city. And I was living in a little hostel in the center of Calcutta. And each morning when I came out, there was a few little beggar girls there. And I got to know them. And they got to know me, and they got to know I was a soft touch. I would always give them something. And after maybe 10 days of being there, somehow they took me to their family. We went through the streets of Calcutta, and their family was living in a disused building site, just a lot of rubble. And they were living with under sort of plastic sheeting with little bits of wood and old tires sort of holding it all together. And yet spending time there, they were with their grandparents, their parents, their siblings, their aunties, their uncles. And I really, really noticed, I thought, well, who's really wealthy and who's really poor? These little girls have emotional wealth. They have this big, extended and loving family. And as we know, sometimes in many parts of our world, we don't really have that emotional richness. We may have so many other things, but we don't have that beauty in our lives. And many times I ask the question, what has given you the most happiness in life? Usually family, relationships. Next question, what's given you the most sorrow? Is it the same answer? Usually it is for most people. But to be honest, I feel that relationships seem to be becoming harder and harder in this world. I have spent 45 years with the Brahma Kumaris. And that means something which I treasure. I meet so many people of so many backgrounds. My experience is scratch the surface of virtually everyone. And when you go in a little bit deep, so many stories, unfinished business hurts around family and relationships. And if we look at our world at the moment, what do we see? For the first time in human history, the breakdown of the family. The family is the social support unit. I often feel it provides the vitamins and the minerals of love, belonging, care, and so on. In some countries, many countries of our world now, like this country, I think around or less than 50% live in a traditional family where mum and dad are still there. So the second thing we're observing is mental health. And as all of us have been reading during the whole COVID drama, one of the biggest concerns is mental health. And I would say that's just coming higher and higher onto the radar, absolutely everywhere once again. There's so many psychological reasons why maybe we don't feel really mentally healthy. But I always remember that I once asked Daddy Genki, who many of you know, the head of the Brahma Kumaris, Daddy, spiritually, what is the reason why so many of us have these mental health issues? She said 2 reasons: a lack of love in this life, a lack of love in a past life. I honestly feel that is so deeply true. The human spirit thrives when it is really loved. There's a sense of belonging. But as all of us struggle so deeply with even having love for ourselves, how can we really offer love to you? And so because I feel so empty, I just want you to keep loving me. And when you can't do it, then sometimes I feel resentful and hurtful as well. And not only, mental health, the family changing, loneliness. Loneliness is an epidemic, an absolute epidemic. We may live even in families. We live in these huge cities with people everywhere, and yet sometimes we feel so disconnected and alone. And then also the amount of conflict. I don't want to go into this because I think we're all over it. I am. Look at the American election. It's just a massive division. And it's not just in that country. I think this is exacerbated all over our planet. This deep differences, deep differences everywhere. And if I look at what I value in life, there's no doubt more than anything, I value the sharing of love. My life experience on the spiritual journey is when the heart feels full of love, I just observe, I feel relaxed, I feel easy, I feel content. And I'm definitely softer, more generous, more compassionate towards those around me. And I always feel the most powerful thing in life is a loving heart. A loving heart has the power to break down these barriers, to fill empty hearts, heal the hearts of those around us who are really in pain and blocked. And a loving heart can go into those dark places and others that absolutely nothing else can do. But on the other hand, when the heart lacks love, once again, my own observation, the mind can never rest, the agitated mind. That overactive mind that's searching, seeking, running. It's just never just relaxing. Why? Because the first need in life isn't there. A quality of love. We may have some, but that quality of love we seem to have a memory of. And so when that first need or first desire isn't satisfied, 1,000,000 desires emerge. The desire for power, the desire for control, the desire for material things, the desire for wealth, the desire for position. Look at our world. It seems that, in the Gita, the oldest scripture of the world, there's a little phrase that says, the final period or the big change period of human history is when the only thing people value is money. And look at our world now. How superficial, how utterly superficial has life become. And even though we're sort of caught up in this material paradigm, we feel so empty, completely and utterly empty as a result, but we don't really know what else to do. And if I was to ask you what are the signs of healthy relationships, all of us know. We all know. We're experts. We've had a life experience to be loving, to be kind, to give respect, to give support, to communicate well, to forgive, to let go. There's a shopping list. But if I was equally to ask you, what are the signs of unhealthy relationships? Once again, we all know them. To be controlling, to be dominating, to be manipulative, to be a bully, to, not value others, etc., etc. We all know them. But I think for those of us on the spiritual journey, what I feel is really of interest is because what I love about spiritual people is we realize it's about me. I can sit around and look at others and blame and complain and go on. And unfortunately, that's the culture of the planet at the moment. But a spiritual person will say, well, what are the signs in me contributing to unhealthy relationships? And I think if I, observe my mind always thinking you are the problem, I stigmatize someone. Whenever they're around, they're just, and I'm convinced they're the problem, but actually it's my reaction to them that's the problem. When, I blame others for everything going wrong in my life, that's one of the biggest traps. The blame game is one of the biggest traps for unhappiness. Or I carry these unrealistic expectations about how others should behave and how others should treat me. And really, when we look behind that, I feel you're here to love me. And often I don't see, well, really, what is my part of the bargain too? Because the law of life says if you give love, you will receive love. Or I can't forgive. I hold grudges. I'm chronically irritated and annoyed with people around me. If these are some of the states of mind or the feelings, then it's like I've got to really look inside and take responsibility and think, what can I do? And one of the big changes for me, huge changes actually, of how truth is so simple. Truth is absolutely simple and sometimes quite blunt. When someone just said to me, what do you have control over? Do you have control over your parents, your partner, your siblings, your boss? Of course not. But actually we're control freaks. We are constantly correcting and wanting people to behave according to my rules and my perception of how things should be. And someone on the spiritual journey realizes the major step to creating healthy relationships, the absolutely key initial step that I have to take if I really want to improve relationships is I can't change you, but I can change my reaction to you. I teach that myself, I talk about it, and yet still sometimes I find the habit to find a victim for how I feel. How deep is it? And yet I feel when I do that, I'm stepping out of truth and I'm under the illusion of falsehood when I'm doing this. Because the law of life says the more you change yourself, that will automatically influence others. And I know many of you would have experienced that. And I love one thing that one of the Greek philosophers said, something like wisdom is the supreme art of happiness. And I would say in this world, the ultimate wisdom is to keep myself happy. Look at the world, look at what is happening, and to keep my inner world in a state of well-being and happiness is a great state of wisdom. So what is unhappiness? Is that the ultimate ignorance? And to me, if I'm unhappy in a relationship, it's a sign that somewhere I lack wisdom. I have to find a new wisdom. It's not really about them. I can't change you, but I can find a new wisdom to work with to begin to change my response, my reaction, my attitude towards you. You may say, yeah, easy to say, but actually, when we go deeper and deeper into the spiritual journey, we get the power to apply these things more deeply in my life. And sometimes I think, what is the wisdom we need? We have such developed intellectual ability today, but often hiding behind this phenomenal intellect that knows so much, We can be quite fragile and quite delicate. And, you know, I might have this intellectual ability, but if there are problems in relationships, does that really help? I don't think so. I don't think so. We often talk about emotional intelligence too, which I think is a wonderful thing to really tune in. To me, it's like absolutely tuning into another, knowing where they're coming from and reading how to respond. What a wonderful wisdom. But once again, if someone rejects you, if someone doesn't like you, if someone's giving you a hard time, does that help? I don't think so. To me, this spiritual intelligence is really the wisdom we need at this moment more and more. And the way I see it is emotional intelligence is the intelligence to build a rich, loving relationship with others. Fabulous. But spiritual intelligence is the intelligence to build a rich, loving relationship with me. And if you were to ask me, what's the heart and soul of the spiritual journey? That's it. To rebuild this damaged, fragmented relationship which I have with myself. You know, the way I look at our planet now, 7.8 billion human beings, what a chaotic world. Why? Because this first relationship with me is so damaged, is so dysfunctional, it just into the world. And that's the madness, the increasing madness we see. And I really don't feel it's going to improve until this healing process of how I feel about myself, how I treat myself. The first relationship in life is with me. If it's dysfunctional or damaged, it will pollute, affect, influence each and every part of my life. And that's why I think, you know, there's 3 sources of love in life. Myself, God, my family, my friends, my connections. For most of us, as I was just saying, this first relationship's not that healthy. In fact, I'm afraid often it's extremely unhealthy. There's this chronic put down, this mental put down of myself. So that's not so healthy. With God, some have faith in God and many don't. But even if I have faith in God, I'm not sure I really taste that real sense of closeness, belonging, intimacy, and love. So my one source of this needy element of love is my family and friends. And what happens? If there's a conflict, if there's a separation, if there's a death or a loss, my life becomes chaotic. My whole life like is thrown into upheaval because the most important ingredient for me to be loved and belonging has been taken away. And I feel naked and I feel absolutely vulnerable. You know, I just don't know really what to do with myself when that happens. And this is why I would say there's 2 major steps on the spiritual journey to take before I even think about having a relationship with you. The first is, how healthy is my relationship with me? How do I treat myself? What is the self-talk in my mind? Am I chronically critical? Am I putting myself down? Am I telling myself I'm hopeless? Am I reinforcing, you know, my weakness, my mistakes? Is that my relationship with myself? Or am I kind? Am I loving? Am I supportive? Or is it a bit of a mixture? I honestly believe if I want to have relationships which are meaningful, loving, and sustainable with you, if I don't have one with me, am I able to do it? I think it makes it much, much harder. Because in my experience, and as you all know, when you come to the Brahma Kumaris, where do we begin? Every single time you come, we begin, know the self. You know, Plato said, if you want to understand the world, you first have to understand and know who you are. And I think we try to understand that world out there, but we don't really know and understand the world in here. And that's where, you know, this first relationship with me. And, you know, my experience on this journey is that when I identify, which we are brought up from the very millisecond of birth to identify that you are this. You are, who are you? You are a temporary body. You are a whole set of labels based on your gender, your nationality, your religion, your family standing, your education, etc., 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 etc. And the more I invest in that belief system, if I can say, which permeates our entire planet, it gives birth to two states of mind which chronically deceive me and are totally destructive in relationships. And I use that word purposefully, completely destructive. The first is my ego. And when my ego is dominating my perception, when I'm sort of thinking, this is who I am, and when it's dominating my perception, that's when I feel so easily insulted, disrespected, not valued, excluded, sensitive, all this sort of stuff. And I would say if they're feelings which are chronically coming into you through your relationships, and what we normally do when those feelings come, we keep blaming you. I keep putting it all the responsibility. You're the person that made me feel insulted and hurt. And actually, it's me. I'm being deceived by my false self, by my temporary self, completely deceived. So that's my ego. The other, and probably even more deceptive, is my lack of self-respect. As we know, the flip side of ego, and this is the I that feels hopeless, inadequate, unworthy, totally inferior, not good enough, depressed, all those sorts of feelings. And so when that mantle is dominating my thinking, I'm being deceived by the ego of inferiority, by my lack of self-respect. And you know, today I think this is such a powerful force that we wear these spectacles and I perceive everything through this deep lack of self-respect. I feel you're talking down to me. I never feel you respect me. I never feel I'm valued. I never feel I'm always complaining that people don't really give me that respect or value, but actually it's me being deceived by a false sense of self. And when I'm living my life under these two states of falsehood, my ego and my lack of self-respect, it's deceiving all my relationships. And so I have conflict here, I feel hurt here, I have the memory of this here. And then I get to a point where I feel, oh, human beings are just all this and that. Well, there's no doubt. It's, many are fragile today. But spiritually, we're rebuilding this relationship with me. And that's why to really normalize relationships, begin to at least lay a foundation to build healthy relationships, I have to begin to experience myself as a soul. This is the lifelong learning of the spiritual journey. When I begin, we are all deeply, deeply body conscious. I'm so dominated by my ego and lack of self-respect, I don't even perceive anything different. But the more I practice to be a soul, when I'm in a soul conscious state, I feel centered. I don't have to impress. I don't have to look good in front of others. I start to build up a sense of self-value. And I really realize that some will, respect me, some will want. I start to really begin to live in a state of truth of who I am. And I'm much more realistic about relating to others. And so this first step, which we go over time and time again, and it's actually needs to be practiced, really. Every single day of my life, I'm practicing to live more in a soul conscious way. And if I observe something not happen, I just try to learn, how can I do it better? The second step to the platform to build healthy relationships is really to have a loving relationship with God. And once again, seeing the times in which we live, I feel really open your heart to this, really open your heart. And, you know, you don't have to be religious or anything, but, you know, I'm a soul, this micro point of life energy that's sitting in front of the brain. I came in when the movement in the womb, and at death, I'm going to leave. I continue. I take a body, I, the soul, express through the senses. I see, I hear, I express through this temporary body, but I'm going to leave it at some point. God is a soul too, the supreme soul, a soul like me in the sense of form, but a soul that has the nature to be absolutely loving, absolutely peaceful. It's like the benchmark that is never deceived by body consciousness, but a real being, not just a nice belief system, a nice idea, a theory, but a real living soul. The challenge is that this soul does not have sense organs. In relationships, we're used to touching and feeling and seeing and talking. But this is a subtle relationship, but absolutely real. And that's why to connect, we remember. And really in the Brahma Kumaris, the more I think of it, why I feel that these days, if you say to people, sit down and meditate, people feel the mind is just so overactive. They find it really difficult. And then subtly there's this belief, I can't meditate. I just can't do it. It's too hard. My mind is all over the place. As some say, the veritable dog's breakfast, so to speak. All I have to do is use what is absolutely natural. What is absolutely natural? To remember. There's nothing more natural to your thinking, your intellect, than to remember. At every millisecond of life, you're remembering. As I'm speaking, you may be remembering your family members, remembering what you have to do. Or, and each time you remember, three things are happening. You connect. Your mind, your intellect connects with a person or a situation or a memory. The instant, this is all instant, in no time, you connect, you're influenced. And as soon as you're influenced, you get a feeling inside. And the logic here is whatever I plug my mind and intellect into, that is really going to be the feeling I carry inside. Sometimes we spend all day dwelling on what someone said to me, and then we wonder why I'm miserable or not happy. I've plugged into a negative thing. I'm influenced by that negative behavior, and I download bad vibes into me, and then I wonder why I'm not happy. What is the logic here? The logic here is to make God my lover, like my friend, my companion. And as you go about your life, as you walk down the road to go to work, as you take breaks at work, as you may do work in the home, whatever you do, you connect. And when you connect, you're connecting to an unlimited source of peace, love, joy, and power. It's real. It's like you're plugging in to what you really need. And the instant you plug in, you are influenced. And the instant you're influenced, high vibrations inside of you. And this begins to sustain you. And when you're in this energy, what happens is you start to spread that energy around. Many times I have the thought, if I connect with my lover, the Supreme Soul, this real soul like me, but a soul that doesn't have a body, I download all this high vibration, and that vibration soothes me, calms me, sustains me. It also transforms an atmosphere and people. If you want to give some rich gift to your friends, this is the energy that will really sustain your family and friends. Not what you say, it's your face, your vibes, the energy that you're putting out. But if you're plugging into the family and all the problems and the situations, low vibe, and you feel low and often not a good energy. If I plug in, if I remember me, my weaknesses, my mistakes, how hopeless I am, the lowest vibration. And this is really the journey to deeply realize whatever I'm plugging my head into. If I even plug my head into constantly watching the news and the world situation, or situations, or conflicts in relationships, I'm going to carry this low, even lowest vibration. I won't be happy. What we learn here is to plug into the Supreme. And you know, my experience, the more you do that, you become objective about what is happening around you. You're not so influenced or disturbed by people, their behaviors, situations. Of course, it takes practice. But to me, there is no better investment, because once I lay this platform properly, I do the work, I practice to be a soul, I really open my heart to this connection with the divine, this connection with God. You know me, I was, you know, an atheist as a teenager. I then became an agnostic, and I just learned about this. And the more I've practiced, it's absolutely transformed me and made me so much more stable. And the main thing is it's real. It's not just a nice, you know, belief or intellectual concept or sort of a, shall we say, you know, a crutch that I'm leaning on. No, it's a real relationship. Because when these two are strong, and then I step into my relationship with others, I'm coming from a place of strength. And like I was touching on before, you know, the first thing I feel in relationships is the first law of spirituality. I am responsible for how I feel. People will be difficult, people will be rude, people will sometimes not cooperate, but every time I have a choice, I can absorb it or I can not absorb it. We are so used to absorbing it, we think, oh, it's impossible not to. Actually, it's very possible not to. But we are so addicted to absorbing the sorrow, the behaviors, the attitudes. We are addicted to it. And so I disempower myself, because that leads on to the thinking, only when you change will my life be okay. So I'm just chronically deceiving myself with that. And I know sometimes there are really deep situations, perhaps what we'd call really deep karmic situations with some individuals. They are not easy. But fundamentally, the more I take responsibility for my feelings, and I step away from the blame game, because, you know, the biggest, probably in spirituality, the biggest deception is the blame game. And what is the world playing at the moment? Everyone's pointing the finger at everyone else as to why I feel the way I do. And all I do is disempower myself more, and only victims blame. I become a complete victim mentality. And it can be so real. Your logical intellect can say, but this and this, and they did this and they did that. But still, what I'm doing is I'm trapping myself in this place of being a complete victim. The second thing that's really helped me in the spiritual journey is to hold the value of others in my attitude. And the heart of relationships is communication. What is relationships about? It's about connecting, communicating. The more I go on, communication, yes, I'm speaking at the moment. You're listening to me going on and on at the moment. But the real communication is through your face, your eyes, your vibes. Really, this is the foundation of connection and communication. And often I read this data that when you get two messages from people, one is what you hear and one is what you feel, you will always trust your feelings. And so what happens is some people wonder why I don't get on with other people, why people don't love me, why I can't come close. Because when I hold the past in my mind, when you come in front of me, and I might say, hi, lovely to see you. But in my mind, I'm thinking, oh, you've done this last week and this has happened. And people feel it. It's like a subtle energy they feel. You won't come close. And that's where on this spiritual journey we learn to break down barriers, to come close, generate goodwill. And I would say, you know, the more you feel close to God, you have the capacity to let go, trying to feel, you know, to let go, feeling hurt and feeling these things, and you can generate goodwill. Goodwill can completely change the dynamics in a relationship, but it has to be genuine, of course. Understand that your mind is like a fountain of vibrations. It's coloring the atmosphere. It's like you're spraying a perfume. People will feel your attitude. And if you find that really people don't come close to you, it's not really about them. Once again, it needs courage, the spiritual journey, because I have to really look at me and what's happening with me. And the next thing, and I'm not going to go on too much longer, just a few more minutes, and then if there's any more questions, but accept difference, accept difference. You know, we're all different, and wisdom, when I have self-respect, I allow people to be who they are. Often we're control freaks. We want everyone to behave as I want. I want situations to have outcomes as I want, so I control and dominate, manipulate. What happens? I alienate people. Accept people. Everyone is different. To me, this is one of the biggest lessons of life. I once remember Hugh Mackay, who's a Sydney Morning Herald journalist, and he's an amazing guy. He's like a social researcher, and he talks about the injection myth, the biggest mistake in communication. You know, we have an idea or something we want to tell, and we feel we inject it into your mind when I speak it. Or it's like I type up an email, I press the send button, it goes pop into your inbox in your mind. And then I sort of rest back and think, now they know what I think. And then you say, I don't agree. That's wrong, or I can't believe it. To me, it just makes sense. We forget the golden rule that when I communicate anything, it goes through your filters of your life experience, your values, your mood, your culture. A whole lot of filters will filter that message. And basically every message is distorted by others, at least from your original form of communication. It happens everywhere. And that's why if your message is backed by loving feelings, mostly the message will be acceptable. But if your message is backed a little bit with that energy of anger, that energy of arrogance, I'm right, and you better understand this, you won't get anywhere. You won't get anywhere in communication. And so allowing people to be who they are. And, you know, and many times in the corporate world, they talk about, you know, the dynamics of groups, the stages of forming, storming, norming, and performing. We come together, we form superficial. As we get to know each other, there will be differences. It's the most natural thing in life. There will be differences. It's absolutely normal. But what moves us from storming and getting into groups and gossiping and blaming and all that into norming is accepting difference, allowing people to do things a bit different from what I feel is the right way. That's true love to me. Allowing people to be who they are and still giving them love, accepting them. The next thing is keep on giving. To me, you know, just keep on giving. The law says that if you want love, give it. If you want respect, give it. If you want cooperation, give it. The people who wait around for love and respect will be waiting. And you observe, just observe those people in your life who look really happy. They're givers. They keep giving love. They keep giving respect. And the law of life means mostly that's what comes their way. Finally, just let go. You know, sometimes we just hold on. You said this. You did this. Who's punished? Who suffers as a result? It's me. I hold on to all this stuff. And you know, sometimes I think When the relationship with God, my own experience becomes really strong. You know, sometimes you sit in front of God, you feel that love and you see, why am I holding on to this stuff? It's my ego, actually. It's once again this temporary identity that feels insulted. So I have to defend an opinion or defend something. To me, freedom, just let it go. Just let it go, move on. Because often I punish myself by holding on to all these discretions of other people. I just punish myself constantly. And yet in my head, I'm blaming you for the problems in my life. Really, spirituality is about creating healthy relationships, but it goes back to taking responsibility for me first, becoming soul conscious, that healthy relationship with me as a soul, not as a temporary body. Nope, that just reinforces the ego and lack of self-respect. And when I'm a soul, look through the eye of the mind, the third eye, see the Supreme, see God, touch God, remember God. As you move about your life, just try it. And you can see up here the form of light, a real being. The more you experiment, you'll start to feel this relationship, this real relationship with the divine, with God. Often we say Baba, an affectionate name that makes the relationship real. And when that is there, I have a platform of self-respect, a platform of stability to start to build healthy relationships with others. And when I do, when I'm a soul, I start to see you as a soul too. And that's a great gift. You know, I love that. Look at the division based on the body today. Goodness, you know, if you just look, so much suffering because of, you know, the gender of my body, the color of my body, the age of my body, the education of my body. There's so much stuff going on. And really, actually, I'm an eternal soul. And the more I identify there and I see you in that way, that is such a gift to restore a meaningful, sustainable, and healthy relationship. So I'm going to wind up. And if anyone would like to ask something, and I'm not even sure whether you just unmute and ask or whether you put in the chat box or both. I forgot to ask. I'm looking at Nancy.
Jackie will relay the...
Oh, Jackie will relay the question. Okay, that's great. That's great.
Thank you so much, Charlie. And the chat box is empty at the moment, so is anybody who would like to ask a question to form a connection and a healthy relationship with Charlie on this page.
I promise you I won't be offended if no one asks questions. Yeah.
Can you please talk more about how to not absorb, react, but transform the negative energy?
Yes, I would say the law of life says that, quite frankly, the emptier I am, the more I'm influenced. So when I'm empty spiritually, everything, because I'm trying to fill the inner vacuum, the position of my mind is what I call the vacuum cleaner position. So when you love me, I absorb that. When you respect me, I absorb that. When you insult me, I absorb that. When you criticize me, I absorb that. And then I blame you once again often. I would say that it's my ego and lack of self-respect that keep actually, you know, taking this sensitivity, taking hurt. You know, I used to have this saying, and I often mention it too, that only my ego accepts sorrow because I'm under the false self. And temporarily you can sort of convince yourself not to be offended. But when you really go deep into who you are as a soul, you will find it just doesn't hit you. And I would say that the whole of the spiritual path is to become pure. And what does that mean? The more impure, if I can say that, the more I, the soul, am under the influence of my ego, my anger, all my weaknesses, my fears, the more impure, the more I'm affected. The more I become pure, the more I practice, the more I become a soul, automatically you're less influenced, to the point that even when you are criticized or put down, you don't absorb it. And, maybe I sound like, is he being real? But really, it's absolutely real. This is the spiritual journey, to practice. I think sometimes we are, often I feel the way we've learned is we learn information, we store it here and we know it, but applying it to life, that's not so easy, and that's spiritual education. Spiritual learning is where I take beliefs and practice, apply, and keep practicing until it becomes who I am. Now, it does take time and it needs patience. And that's where what works in this world now is really to have a structure every day. And I would honestly encourage everyone, practice, meditate daily, and really lay a foundation of experiencing who you are, experiencing God, and practicing during the day, and then seeing how you progress at night. Really start the journey. You will find after a while, the more all you have to do is know who you are, experience who you are, connect with God, you'll be less influenced by others around you.
It's a bit like Charlie in the commentary, the meditation reflection we had in the beginning, where it says, my inner compass to direct my external life.
Yes, exactly.
All the questions are really coming in. You may have already covered it, but you might want to direct. This one is, how do I resolve conflict with someone I dislike a lot? Dislike a lot.
Yeah. There's so many layers of this. And can I say that, why do I have so much dislike for somebody? Is that also maybe telling me something about myself? Do I dislike myself too in some ways? Because I really do feel the more I heal me, the less I will let myself get so engaged with the bad behavior of others. Because, honestly, it's not easy. And I just want to really validate, I know some behaviors are really difficult. Why? Because people dislike themselves. I find that when someone's really angry, and it's really scary, isn't it? When someone really is angry and yells and screams, what are they saying? They're saying, help, help, I'm in pain, I'm in spiritual pain. I don't know what to do with all this built up anger and hurt inside of me. So I explode at somebody, and we take it all incredibly personally. To resolve conflict, it depends on the level. If you can sit down and talk openly, sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. If you need a third party you both trust who's really neutral, sometimes that can help deal with things. Spiritually, we usually say it's best not to move away from other people, try to change. But in saying that, I would think in this world, if the relationship is absolutely toxic, as they say, and it doesn't seem that either of us can get out of that toxic connection, then maybe we need a break from each other, need some time out. Personally, I think generally the spiritual way is try to transform it, really work, and taking the responsibility for my own attitude and my own part of the relationship. If I put it all back on you, it's really you who are the problem. I will not get to first base in healing the relationship, because both of us have stuff that's making this relationship difficult. But yeah, I do think, you know, sometimes to have a third party, if that will work, it's worthwhile trying.
I believe in unconditional love, but what if someone continually treats me badly? What should I do?
I think that, you know, as I was just saying, I've got to really reflect on, you know, how much I keep taking this on board. And I've got to sort of stand right back and look at the dynamics of relationships. And here, as you know, most of you, we talk about the law of karma. And that means that often these really difficult relationships are embedded in the past. There's some accounts, and that's quite a good word, really, some accounts, some behaviors on both sides from the past that when we come into connection, we don't like each other or we reject each other. Though often these karmic accounts are very deceptive, because often they have a really good little bit and a bad bit too. So initially there's the attraction. I'm really pulled, attracted. Sometimes, you know, I often say if you really pulled, you get a bit, infatuated by somebody, I would be really careful, because often that masks something much deeper. So the first part, the initial part, is all this attraction. And as you get to know them, the real stuff which we all carry in our subconscious, our past stuff. So the karmic account, the karmic dynamic changes from positive to negative, and sometimes deeply negative. And unfortunately, it happens a lot today. And so people start relationships, they start beautifully, I'm a head over heels, gets a bit negative, then it gets deeply negative. I break away, I break it off, I'm so hurt, I'm damaged, I'm upset. I start another one, same stuff. I go through the same cycle. I don't learn, because actually when two damaged beings come together and trying so needy of you, and you can't fulfill my needs, and then I put it all back on you. And this is why I think spirituality says really almost step back from being so needy of another person. Look at myself, know who I am, really develop this relationship with God, heal, start to heal, and then step into relationships with a whole different approach. You know, I don't know how that sounds, and I don't want to sound too theoretical, but, you know, absolutely when you step back into your power, like I was saying at the very beginning, the most common question, and I think, I don't know how many countries I've visited, but I think close to 100 countries of the world, the same question everywhere, the same question, how to deal with really negative, difficult people. That's the main question in the minds of most of us. And the answer is, start to deal with me first and my story, and begin the healing in here. Where do I get the power? From God. Really experiment with that, rather than keep trying to deal with that person. And when you start to heal, you'll find your outlook to that person really begins to shift, or you feel less influenced by that person.
If they like my food, or the food I cook for them, and they thank me, is that in what way is that love? In what way is that love?
You know, I think that's so much love, actually. You know, love is expressed in cooperation, in, you know, really when people cook, why does some food, is it so tasty? Because the vibrations of the mind, the deep love and care comes through the food. And that's why they always say there's no cooking like mums, you know, because mums always really have that depth of love and care. You can express love, you know, through your face and your attitude. Some people, you know, like some will remember grandmothers who don't say much, but they feel absolute belonging because mentally the grandmother or the person just accepts me as I am. And I think there's so many actions that absolutely express love. To me, the beauty of life is love. And the most beautiful life is when I keep expressing love and I'm not afraid to really express. And I don't mean just verbally, really see the soul, give love to the soul. It's the most rewarding experience, deeply rewarding.
It's like everyone feels on their birthday, huh?
Yes.
What practices, Charlie, do you do each day to be a soul, in particular with work and family? Is meditation your main form of being an eternal soul? When the mind goes back to old habits.
Yeah, you know, the word I love is attention. And the second word I love is experience. And I think so much of this journey is converting the belief. You know, 80% of Australians believe there's something more than a temporary body. 80% of us, 4 out of every 5. I'm a soul, the spirit, the Atma. The Sanskrit word for the soul is the Atma, which means I, the living, the dweller in the body. The reality of life, the eternal reality of life is that I'm a soul. I enter the womb at the quickening, like I was saying. I sit on the throne of the forehead and I say this when I'm born. You know, this is my mum, this is my dad, this is my city, this is my country, this is my partner, these are my kids. You know, you build up this whole identity around your body. In a second, you leave it, you die. But the soul continues. And really, the more you go about your day, what I do, I really am always gently attentive. And when my attitude strays a bit into waste, I observe it and I just tweak it. I just try, I'm the soul and I see the soul. When I'm the soul, I feel so easy inside, so calm, and all, rather than allowing the world out there to dominate how I feel in here. People, their opinions, situations, when things don't go according to my expectations, it's practice. This is the spiritual journey. To really go about, I used to go for long walks and just practice to be a soul. Sometimes when I go to a meeting, I just practice seeing the souls and giving respect to the souls. Keep practicing, start little things to help you really, because body consciousness is like an addiction. And the more body conscious I am, my ego, my lack of self-respect distort. They're like a distortion in my thinking and my perception of myself and everything happening around me. It takes practice. And that's why, you know, we, as you know, at the center, every single day we wake up, we meditate, we remember God, we discuss together, and then we step into the day and we practice. And sometimes even we share when we meet how we're going, what we're learning, things that don't work, mistakes we make, but how I can do it better next time.
The person who asked this question, how to manage perception of people at work, especially being from an Indian culture in Australia, do you feel you've had an answer to that, or do you think you can add something to that, Charlie?
Yes, I think culture is an extraordinary thing because it's a lens we all wear. And I read a book some years ago, which really, I always forget the name, but I think it was something like Clash of Civilizations. It was from a Harvard professor. And he talked about the 11 main cultures of the planet and how they all have a value system and an educational system. And when I wear my cultural filter and I see others, sometimes I think they're uneducated and uncivilized. And so hence all this arrogance of culture, which we all have. Unfortunately, most cultures have a sort of a superiority complex. Our culture is the best. But you know, there's a culture of the soul, and that's the real culture, not the culture of the body. the culture of the soul is the culture of peace and the culture of respect for all. And I would really, look through that filter. And my experience, wherever you go in the world, people are so good. They're so lovely. If you look at the soul, and sometimes, if you look at the intent of people, their behavior might look a bit strange or weird, but actually their intent is usually almost always good, I find. They want to do good things. They want to be good, but sometimes it comes out awkwardly. And what is in one culture, considered good manners is bad manners in another culture. And then we judge them. But actually, and I'll tell you just one little experience that I was in Adelaide once. And there was a woman there who was the chair of the Ethnic Affairs Commission. She was telling me that they did some research because a lot of young Vietnamese boys were being arrested by the police. And they wondered why. And then when they began to look into it, what happened when the police would stop them in the street? In the Vietnamese culture, respect is to look down. And in the Western culture, that's guilt. So all the police thought, oh, these guys are guilty, look. So they arrested them. But actually they were showing respect. And that's such a simple thing, but this happens all the time. And that's where really I feel it's a blessing to live in a country like here, which is multicultural, where we learn the beauty of every culture and be open, because my experience is every culture has so much beauty. And just last year I went to New Guinea, and sometimes people would make a lot of assessments about that country and the crime. And I actually went to a school, a girls and boys school, and the whole day they did all the traditional dances from all the regions of the country. It was so moving. I can't tell you the beauty of that culture, the richness of that culture. And really every culture has so much beauty. And that's where we have to, if we're in another culture, it's the healthiest thing to learn. I've spent 8 or 10 years in India. I love India and I love the culture in India. And, I've spent time in so many other parts of the world too. But I think it's really good to really open myself and, sometimes really look at the filters I carry. And especially, I think that often most cultures, whether it's European, North American, Japanese, Chinese, Indian, whatever, we have a little bit of, we're ingrained with a little bit of cultural superiority. Our culture is the best culture. And that creates so much. Look at our world at the moment. A lot of problems. Excuse me for rambling on here at the moment.
I think you've also answered this question, how to remain mentally strong and not get disturbed by toxic energy of people. I think you've said that, yes.
Can I just say one thing too, Jackie, that in the Brahma Kumaris, we have something, we talk about being loving and detached. And some people, they really think, oh, I'm not sure about that. Detachment is such a difficult word for most of us because the implications are aloofness, withdrawn,
don't care,
cut off, don't care. Actually, to be truly loving, you have to be detached. The more you're uninfluenced, you can love people in a good mood, you can love them in a bad mood. True detachment actually just means to be uninfluenced. And I find the more you go on the spiritual journey, the more you feel close to God, you're pulled beyond influence, and you can't please all the people all the time, Sometimes people won't be happy with you, but if we keep getting wounded mortally by other people, I've got to look at myself. And really, the more you love God, you will naturally be less influenced. You'll be naturally detached from people. It's a blessing in this world.
It's the ability to not buy into someone else's trauma, isn't it? But to be compassionate.
Yeah, absolutely.
So this is a bit of a repeat too. I want to stop hating someone, but everything they do makes me so mad. and angry, and my hate only grows.
Yeah, really. I mean, can
with-
I just say, how do you feel when you hate? You feel terrible because it's not our natural state. You feel, because the real byproduct of that is not the other person, it's how you feel about yourself. Deep down, you don't like who you are. If you see yourself hating people and rejecting people, and you know, to be honest, I found some people hate and reject. And when they're rejected, they're mortified, absolutely mortified. How could you do that? That's the most terrible and hurtful thing. We don't see, I do it all the time myself. And then when you do it to me, I'm absolutely mortified and disturbed. You know, and unfortunately, that's what they often say. The ones who, you know, really feel rejected don't even observe that often they do the same to others too. But we don't often see me and how I am. And it's not easy sometimes to be that honest with myself and say, it's true, I'm like that too. But in spirituality, it's not about feeling bad about that, but actually feeling good that I'm actually understanding my stuff more. And now I have tools to begin to try to work with it and change it, rather than just feeling that life is just one battle from woe to go and people are just difficult. You know, in saying that, I know people's behavior is challenging, but the more you get healthy and strong, you will find it easier. It's a guarantee.
And the last one, how do I walk the tightrope of parenting in regards to expectations?
Yeah, you know, it's a really deep thing, isn't it? And the way we look at parenting from a spiritual perspective is that me and my husband or my wife create a body for a soul to come into. We don't create the mind, the soul, the personality. We are a trustee for that person. Because to be really honest, I think once again, the way this world is, we sort of live our lives through our children. So if my children don't perform to my expectations, we can reject them. And so many suffer that. Or, you know, if they really perform, then I have that sort of, I don't know, maybe a little bit of arrogance about it too. And, you know, I've seen so many times that there's two influences on children. One is the family. The second is their karmic story the soul brings with it. And sometimes some parents are such good parents, but their children, one of the children maybe just is not happy, is disturbed, is confused, is lacking deep self-respect. And we blame ourselves, but actually really, sometimes I've seen the most loving families, but the karmic story is so strong in the soul. Just last week in Sydney, I was talking to a woman, such a lovely mother she was. You could just see, and her daughter was in hospital, in a mental hospital. Now, her daughter's a bit of a high flyer, but she just had a complete flip out. This poor mother was absolutely and utterly distressed, and took it on board. Her and her husband took it all on board. What is it about us? But, she, I've been talking to her actually for a few weeks, just meditating more. She said, I just can't believe how better I'm feeling. And I'm getting a perspective. And she said, the more I'm feeling better about myself, automatically that's radiating to my daughter too. And I was saying, if you go in front of her with this worried, distraught face, that doesn't help. But if you really see the soul and really give support, that's going to really be of a support to her. According to what we understand, we're at the end of a cycle of time. The human souls have lost their power, and so all this dysfunctional behavior is all around us at the moment. And that's why the main way of dealing with it is to really take back my power. And as I take back my power, it's not that everything is solved, but you come from a platform of strength rather than constantly feeling vulnerable and like a cork on the ocean being pushed from this scene to the next scene.
Charlie, would you take us perhaps into a meditation on that point, that how I take power from Baba too? But there, I should give respect to the last question. It's because it's coming from a BK too. How do we prepare to do server of the youth of today who have mental issues? Oh, you touched on that. It just said, Baba said that there will be a lot of more server coming. The angry ones will not go to the center. Will it be personalized group or door-to-door server? Thank you. Did you get the gist of that, Charlie?
Not really. You know, maybe I can just say honestly, I think it's service through who you are, service through your mind, service through feelings. That's what gives support to people. Just see the soul and have some compassion. Don't get too caught up in the external behaviors, but see the soul and try to value the soul. And that even just your vision can cool people down, you know, your company. Even if you can't say much, if you remain peaceful, I'm a peaceful soul. If you remain connected to Baba, really your presence often is the main way of supporting people. Anyone, young people, anybody.
Well, thanks everyone for the lively questions. And I think we could just sit back and have a few minutes with Charlie to end the session. And thank you very much, Charlie. There's been appreciation also expressed in the chat of the very worthwhile topic and for the views you've given. Much appreciated. So we put Charlie full screen on the soul, and I'll say good night.
So thank you so much, Jackie, and thank you, everybody. It's really been lovely to be with you. And I know we've gone way over time because there's quite a few questions, but so just have a very short meditation. We're living at a time where the world around me seems to be more and more chaotic. I can't change the world around me, but I can change my reaction to the world around me. This is spirituality. And the way I regain a strength, a willpower, a determination, a stability, is to put my mind under the influence of God. In the eye of your mind, visualize the form of God, a spark, a radiant jewel of life energy. And just rest your mind on that image. But take a step further and open myself to a relationship, a real soul, a loving being, my real parent. And if you feel comfortable, refer to this being as Baba. So I establish a sense of connection and belonging. And when I put myself under this influence, just feel your inner world cooling, calming. And as I calm down and experience myself as a peaceful soul, then look at the world again, and I see a different world. a world where I'm not so influenced or disturbed. And I begin to understand that the more I live in the awareness of who I am, and the more I remember, Baba, I have inner power and inner peace to manage whatever this world throws at me. Sometimes I may temporarily fail, but if I keep practicing, I build an inner resilience. And as this world seems to become more and more chaotic, this resilience will protect me, and my presence will become a support for all those around me. So thank you so much, and Om Shanti, and have a lovely evening and a lovely week, and hope to see you again. Thank you. Om Shanti.